Hi, second grade. I hope you guys all had a great weekend. It was so great to see you all last week as I drove around Bordentown. I had a lot of fun teaching you guys how to write fairy tales last week. And this week we're going to work on how to write some of our own fairy tales based off other fairy tales that we've already read. So this is really fun, and I think you guys are really going to like this because it gives you more of a structure to write your own fairy tale. So, how to write your own version of a fairy tale that you already know. First, I want to explain to you guys, why do people change popular fairy tales in the first place? So, authors do this to make their readers laugh, to surprise their readers, to give the other side of the story. For example, in The Three Little Pigs, you might want to hear the wolf side of the story. Maybe the wolf was really the good guy, but we wouldn't see that because we always read the story as the wolf being the evil character and the three little pigs being the good characters. So sometimes authors like to do this just to change the story up a little bit and surprise people. People also do this to make their story unique or different and to give it a different meaning. So, say you wanted to take the story of the three little pigs and make it mean something else. You can change your story and your characters and everything in it to make it mean something totally different, but it could still have the same base of the story as the three little pigs. And another main reason why authors might change a popular fairy tale is to give it a more modern and relatable meaning. They might want to change the setting to a more modern time so that their readers can really relate to what the story is trying to explain. So, ways to do this in your own fairy tales that you're going to be changing. In the beginning, we like to change the characters, change the time period and the setting, change all of those little beginning pieces that help us put the story together. And then our middle and our end are going to follow all of those changes that we make in the beginning. So, what we do in the beginning is going to really help organize how we're going to change our events and our actions in the middle, and how our ending is going to unfold, and what the overall lesson of our story will be at the end. So, changing the beginning, here are some examples I wanted to show you guys on how you could begin to do this. First, you might think that you want to change the characters. For example, in Cinderella, you might want to change the main character to a boy instead of a girl. Or instead of using adults as the main characters in the story, to make it more relatable to you, you might want to change the characters to kids. I have some pictures here of some different versions of Cinderella that I thought were really interesting. This one right here is called Cindy Ellen, a wild Western Cinderella. So this one kind of relates to my second point, where you might want to change the setting. You could change it to a different time period, so modern day, or just a different time period that you like. Or you could change it to a different country with a different culture. And that's what these two pictures right here are really showing. Cindy Ellen is a wild Western princess. She is a cowgirl. And if you're really into something like that, you might want to write a story with characters like that. And this other one I have here is called the Irish Cinderlad. Now, I like this one because it used both of my points to change the story. In this version of Cinderella, the main character is a boy instead of a girl. It is also written about a boy who lives in Ireland, so it's also focusing on a different culture. So it's a totally different aspect of Cinderella, but it still follows the same storyline. And down here, I thought this one was just kind of cute to remind you guys, whoops, that you can use all types of different characters. It's called Cinderella Penguin. So you might want to even change your characters to different types of magical creatures, or even just animals that you like. So your middle is going to follow all of these changes that you make in the beginning. Changing your middle is super important because you can't just change the beginning characters. All of these changes that you make have to kind of go together and flow naturally. So in the middle, you're going to focus on changing the events of your story and the actions of your characters to make sure that they line up with what your new characters might want and what your setting might set them up for. And then again, when you're changing your ending, you also might have to change how the character solves their problem. It could just be with different types of objects or characters that they're using, but you need to make sure that this ending follows all of these other changes that you've written so far in your story. And then you also might want to focus on, how does the lesson change in this new story that you've written. So now that I've covered all of this, I want to explain to you how the story Cinderella might fit into the fairy tale writing outline that we used last week, just to review what this story is. So this week, when we change our stories and we write our new version of a story that we already know, since we read Cinderella last week, I wanted to use this to have you guys change and write your own version. So first, I wanted to review with you all of the main parts of Cinderella so that we can just remember this while we work on our new fairy tale. So in the beginning of Cinderella, our main characters in the version that we've already read are Cinderella and the fairy godmother. Those are our heroes. And our villains are the stepmom and stepsisters of Cinderella. The setting is in a faraway land where there's lots of castles and it's from a long time ago. And the story's lesson is that being kind will get you what you want. And then the magical events and places, things, or people, we have the fairy godmother, her wand, the magical pumpkin carriage, and Cinderella's glass slippers. Those are all really big parts of this story that we might want to use and change in our own way for our new stories. In the middle, we have our three events. Cinderella wants true love, that is her goal. And then we know that she plans on doing this by trying to go to the ball to meet the prince. However, the villains, her stepsisters and her stepmom, make this hard for her because they lock her at home and they make her clean, so she doesn't have a dress or time to go to the ball. So Cinderella's fairy godmother steps in and helps her attend the ball by giving her a dress and a carriage to take her there, and that is how Cinderella defeats the villains in this story. And then some transition words you can use to tie all these things together that I noticed while reading Cinderella were once upon a time, one day, next, then, finally, all these words that we've talked about before. I just wanted to remind you of some of those. And then in the ending, Cinderella reaches her goal because she meets the prince and they fall in love. She loses her glass slipper at the ball, but then when she tries it on the next day, the prince knows it was her because it fits perfectly. And this is the part of your story that might be a little bit different than this because it's going to follow what your own characters are really doing. And then the villains are punished in Cinderella because the stepsisters do not fall in love. And Cinderella is rewarded because her and the prince do fall in love. And then her happy ending is that Cinderella and the prince live happily ever after.